Do you know what? I was just thinking about how we first met, and this that for those people who are listening, this plays into the whole questions of what I'm going to ask you. And it was in what was that app that no one uses anymore?
Clubhouse?
Clubhouse. And you were
Yes.
focusing on the SEO, and you were actually doing really phenomenal with it on socials, at least it appeared. And I know that you've got that background from your first business, which we'll talk about. But I guess the first question for you, and this is kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but what made you go back to coaching?
How I even ended up in SEO to begin with was because it was sort of always that, like, the what if in my mind. And if you're like me, you're listening to us talk and you have multiple passions or multiple directions you could take, how it's always felt like in my mind is as if I'm standing in front of five doors, right? Like door one, door five. And I've gone through some of these doors, and SEO happened to be one that I'd never gone through. And so when you met me and we started connecting on social, yeah, I was crushing it. I was getting so much love. I was getting plenty of business. But in terms of why did I switch out of that and go back to coaching is how I like to phrase this is the sooner you actually try things, the quicker you teach yourself on what's not for you. And so for me, SEO, it was just one of the strangest periods of my life. It was about 3 months. It was quick enough for me to actually make really good money and then also burn out really quick. I started to hate making any content about it. I didn't like working with the people, and every day started to feel like a drag. I ultimately believe that most of us get into this because of freedom. We want the freedom to make our own choices. And if you start feeling like this is a drag every single day, then what are you doing this for? Because you could go to a 9 to 5 and have that feeling like a drag and make more money. It'd be easier. Yes, it'd be
With the
safer.
salary? It was 3 months, but it seemed like overnight where you said, "Oh, by the way, I'm going back to coaching." And it was I actually didn't know you had a coaching background previously, so it was such a kind of shock of, "Oh, wow, this is so different. She's doing so well. How is she leaving this behind?" Did you also feel called to coaching, or at that point were you just not sure what you wanted to do, but it wasn't
I'm
SEO?
gonna be real honest. The true reason why I even turned to SEO, in addition to the whole like what if in my mind, the bigger reason why I turned to SEO to begin with was because I felt like I couldn't hack it as a coach. So I started off the year with the full intention of I'm going to be a coach, I'm going to be a life coach, I'm going to help people. And I fully believed in coaching, but the part I did not believe in was myself. I did not believe in my ability to coach and deliver results for people to help them actually transform their lives. And there's some truth in there. Like every time you have one of those moments where you start to doubt yourself, there's usually a reason. And this is where I do not agree with most of the people out there. If you're so busy feeling imposter syndrome or you're feeling self doubt, you are probably running away from the thing that is causing that doubt instead of confronting it. And that's what I did. And I know I have a knack for teaching, but if we're thinking about the zone of genius versus the zone of excellence, this is where it's at. Okay, there is going to be a difference between doing what you're good at versus doing what you actually love and what you're called to do.
What do you feel now is what you are good at and what you're called to do? How are you is there actually a question even before that is do you believe now having made that transition, is it possible to unify them both? And of course, we all hope you're gonna say yes, but if you can expand on it.
Yes, but it's not going to be in the way that everybody around me has tried to make me unify. So, what I would say is, everyone I know has tried to make me unify them, as in, maybe you can somehow do one or do the other. Maybe you can alternate your posts on social between marketing and between coaching, or maybe you can make posts about the marketing mindset or the mindset needed in order to start your own business. And that's not it. Okay. So unification is going to look different for everyone. And it's up to you to decide what that looks like. All of those talents I brought to SEO for teaching SEO is still present, and I can draw upon those in coaching. And that's what makes my coaching so special. It's very analytical, it's very evidence driven. And I have a real gift for spotting patterns. And so all of that is how I was able to make my business run off of SEO. This is how, you teach SEO. It's all about those patterns. It's about learning to, make yourself visible in the right ways.
This is an incredible point because you bring up something that I think everyone struggles with, maybe not yet if they're a new entrepreneur, but the fact that you will probably have to start over and do your business differently multiple times. And it's easy to feel like that time was wasted. But there's like a softer connection too, which is I can spot patterns. And these are the skills that you don't think about. It's not just the hard skills you got from the business that failed or the business you quit, it's the underlying stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how it first started, though, on your journey? Because I believe you started as a photographer before the
Well, this
SEO,
is what I
right?
was gonna say. This is where I was gonna ask you. Define first business, okay?
You had a service or product that you sold more than
Okay.
once.
Well, then let's reach all the way back into history. Once upon a time, there was a girl in 4th grade who was renting out her pencil case, which sounds ridiculous, okay? But I kid you not, that's what I did. I had this beautiful pencil case from Korea, and it's one of those ones where I don't know if you've ever had like a caboodle kit, the makeup holder. It was very much like that, but for your, your office stuff as a student in school. So it had like all these little drawers and like a pop-up thing and multiple compartments. I tell you, I'm not exaggerating when I say when I brought that thing to school, I was the envy of every kid in my class. And I decided to capitalize on that, okay? I started renting out my pencil case to other people. They could have it for a day, they could have it for a week. It was up to them. They would pay me for how long they wanted to have it and use it. That was my first business venture.
How did you set the rates for renting? I'm curious.
Okay, and do not judge me. I was a kid growing up in Alabama. I thought charging a quarter a day was plenty of money because I was basing this off of how much the snacks cost in school. And in my mind, I was like, as long as I have
Ah.
enough to pay for the snacks I wanted to have every day, then I was happy. So that's all it took.
I mean, this is how people still price things in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So it's, can I afford the things that I want? And this is how I'm going to set the pricing on it. So it's not that crazy to do as a kid. What about, I guess we got to put more parameters on this because I have a feeling you have many more businesses. Let's do it this way. When was the first business you had that you had a website for and sold your services? You don't have to have sold them online. It could be an in-person business, but you had a full website for what you were doing.
Okay, that's that's a real hard requirement there. So first, a full website for myself was for photography.
How did you come around that? Because at some point you made your first sale in photography, and you must have done that without having testimonials, without having at least your photos. I mean, there was no AI back then, so I don't know if we were stealing them.
Who do you drag into this? Your family and your friends. Let me practice on you. And so that's how I started to get some photos. Were they good? No. But I had at least something that I could show that was realistic to my skill level. And that's when I started to build my base, okay? And I would say that whole initial phase of building out, like building your portfolio and then actually starting to feel confident about charging money, because this is the other huge step that most people will suffer through is it is a radical mindset shift to go from saying I'm building my portfolio to I'm charging money for this now. And it is a total mindfuck.
This I mean, the pricing thing, actually, we should delve into that because that's something we haven't talked about so much on the show. That's a special kind of imposter syndrome right there is especially in the beginning, how what right do I have to charge this amount? And also, I don't know about you, but I know I had people that I love, well-meaning, telling me, "Why do you think people are gonna pay that much money?" Like, I don't know if you
I'll
had
go
that.
you one better. You have family like mine, not just my parents, but also my husband's parents telling me outright, "Oh, you're charging too much." It's almost like I'm married into Kim's Convenience, the series on Netflix, if you've ever seen it. He and I both grew up Korean business owners with a convenience store. That was our life. Okay. You have to realize that when you grow up in that framework, right? That context of a convenience store, the price point of anything in the store is probably not going to be more than like $25. So, of course, in their mind with photography, they hear me saying I charge 275 for just the session. You don't even get any photos and they're like, "What?" And not just that, okay? I remember stopping by my parents' store on one of the vacations I was visiting them. My parents literally had a business card from a local photographer, and they were like, "She charges $50, and she gives you, like, 100 photos." I'll say one of the
Yeah.
best quotes I've ever heard before is, "The biggest mistake we ever make is thinking other people think like us," right? Thinking other people see like us.
I feel, when you were talking about how it's always going to be something, it's going to be, how can you charge this much? Why are you quitting the business that was working well? Why are you going into this totally different niche? It's almost like the business version of what we get as women. When are you gonna have a child? Or when are you gonna get married? When is the second kid coming? When is the third kid coming? Why did you have 3 kids? Like, it's all over again, it's the same thing, and I'm not saying it's gender specific here because I don't think it is, but as an entrepreneur, it's the same thing again and again, so you can never, ever depend on someone else's validation. It just doesn't
No, it
it's
is
not
not
worth it.
worth it, and I will also say it's not worth arguing with these people.
This is amazing advice. We hear it, sometimes I wonder if you could listen to a relationship podcast and then just the po like, there's so much of it as an entrepreneur that you can take in terms of your relationship with your business and other people, because this is the same thing, right? Like, you are never gonna change a person in a relationship. They have to choose to change, and you're never gonna convince someone to support you in your business. They have
Oh
to
my
decide to
gosh,
do that.
that was so good. I almost spit out my water listening to you. Because yes, you see people out there, they take that marketing angle of sales is like dating or business is like marketing, all of it. There's a reason why they keep drawing parallels to dating or to relationships because it's true. You can't make someone support your business. And I think that's the part that's
Yeah.
really hurtful for us is when we see our family or friends not supporting us. Do you know how many complaints I get from clients who are like, "I don't understand why they never like my Instagram posts about my business stuff?" And I'm like, "Why does that matter?" The story that's playing in their heads is they don't like my Instagram posts or they never like my Instagram posts, therefore they don't like what I'm doing or they think what I'm doing is stupid.
Not to trivialize that, and I don't think you are, but just for anyone listening, it does feel painful when someone that you love and you talk to every day or every week, be it a friend or a partner or family, doesn't like something that you created, doesn't give it a comment, doesn't I remember, I'll never forget the first friend I had that unsubscribed
Oh
from my
no.
newsletter. I wanted to cry.
Oh no.
And then the next day, she just saw me as if nothing had happened. In my mind, I'm just ruminating. Why did she unsubscribe? Like,
Okay, okay. I am dying to ask. Did you ever talk to her about it?
yeah, she's gonna hear about it now, but like 10 years later.
All right. I want that update.
But yeah, like, it's really hard. I think the emotional aspect of it and the people's opinions, that's kind of the hardest part of the journey, especially in the beginning, and I know you've had your fair share of dealing with that. How did you handle it when you decided to go back to coaching and you knew you were gonna get these comments? First question is, how did you manage that? And then second question is, what did you decide to do differently in your coaching approach this time? Because it's what you're still doing
Okay,
now.
I will address the comments first. So, you know how a few minutes ago I was saying everyone's going to have an opinion? That totally happened. I was scheduled for several podcasts. People had invited me on to talk about SEO stuff, marketing stuff. They canceled on me after I made the shift. Even though I said, "Hey, I'm still going to do the podcast for you because I know I made this commitment." And obviously, it's not like I just forgot everything I knew just because I switched. So they made the choice for me. And that was really interesting. That was, it felt like a sting for sure. There were other comments, which I still get to this day, especially from Christo. He's like, "You're crazy. You could be sleeping on mattresses of cash. You crazy for not doing this." I'll say this. This is the interesting thing that has entered into my thinking this year. I realized I had a limiting belief. I felt that to be the coach, I had to make all my money from coaching. This year has been different. You know that I recently became published. I also have started doing workshops for companies. So now these are avenues I'm already making money that isn't from coaching. And so that was the moment where I realized, okay, there's something in my thinking that's still not making sense. But yeah, the comments, you're going to get these comments from people like, don't you want to make money? Or you crazy to walk away from all that money? I got the same kind of comments when I left Amazon. You know, I walked away from over $300,000 worth of stock at Amazon because the stock had not vested. Amazon is on a 4-year vesting cycle, and I
Oh,
left at
shoot.
1.5 years. I would say I'm just used to that. To me, you can always make more money, but you will not get back the time you spend doing something you knowingly hate. If you are in a place where you're not sure if this is going to work out for you, or if there's this other thing you're also not sure about, your highest priority should be to just try as many things as possible and to get to a place of knowing. And you getting to that place of knowing cannot be about you struggling with, I don't like this because I'm not good at it versus I don't like this because I just don't like this. That's the place of knowing you need to get to. What did I do differently about coaching? I had to confront the fact that I really felt like a bad coach because honestly, I was. So, this is what I mean by with imposter syndrome. If you are feeling doubt or imposter syndrome, there's usually a reason in there that you may be trying real hard to run away from to avoid. You have to face that and then make a decision. What are you going to do about that? If you feel like a bad designer, a bad photographer, a bad coach, if you see yourself with clients who aren't getting the results, what are you going to do about that?
This is incredibly powerful. I don't think anyone else that I know of has really talked about this, that there is a kernel of truth to your imposter syndrome, and you need to explore that. And if you aren't good, then get good. It doesn't mean you can. It's that very fixed mindset of, oh, if I'm not already talented at this, then why even try? But in fact, rarely are people good, especially at coaching in the beginning that they do. And this is a very direct question, I guess, but do you feel like you are now delivering the value to the people that you serve, that you work with?
It's so interesting you asking me this because I almost said 100%. And then I paused because I think that was like my automated response. That's like the thing that I think I'm supposed to say. And let me be honest, I would say 90% of the time, I do feel like I'm delivering the value. And in fact, above and beyond. But that remaining 10%, it's usually because I'm not actually identifying the right fit for clients for me.
The client fit, now that you bring it up, we should definitely go into this because this is the biggest mistake that I see people make in their first 3 years of business is just saying yes to anyone, even when they know that it's not a good person for them. I remember there was one woman, I actually feel bad if I should even say this story, but I'm going to say it. So I was past my 3 years, had learned this lesson that you're saying, and there was this woman that wanted wellness coaching. She was a lovely person, but I could just tell, like, personality-wise, it just was way too high demand for me, and so I recommended her to a friend of mine, who then recommended her to another friend, and then she came back to me, and we kept passing it around. This was actually a mismatch also of services. I think what she needed was something much more than what any of us could give. What are the things you think about or you would recommend to someone listening to figure out if a client makes sense for you?
What most of the people out there are saying is it's only about the fact of whether you can solve their problem. That's only half of the equation here because the other half is who is this person and how do they like to work and will you two mesh there, right? Because there's how you like to work and then there's how they like to work. If you come across someone and you start to question, there is any doubt no matter how small in your mind of whether this is a fit, you need to learn to listen to yourself, right? So I would say when we talk about entrepreneurship, there are so many lessons you need to learn. And one of them is just simply know your limits and be comfortable with them. And there's nothing wrong with that because I see this with coaches, number one, across the board. Coaches trying to bend themselves into a pretzel for a problem that they inside in their heart know that they probably cannot help that person with, and they still do it anyway. There are going to be things like the savior complex coming in, and this is what I mean by self-worth. If we orient ourselves around like this helper mentality, that's going to cause a lot of problems. And that's what gets us into these situations of bad fit clients.
This is amazing advice because you're right that we have the instinct. It's almost like almost have a physical reaction, don't you? When you're on that initial that exploratory discovery call and you're doing it and you're just kind of crunching your shoulders up thinking, yeah, I don't know if I want to make this sale. And then you almost hope they say no, but then they want to buy the full package. It's hard. It's hard. This is amazing advice for this. And your point too about the savior complex, because it is for many people listening, they will be in similar industries to us, or even in marketing. They want to also help people in promoting their businesses or growing. What do you feel? You've already mentioned how you were able to shift back into coaching, the new approach you took, and how you did become better for your clients. What were some of the things that you invested in either this time or in your prior businesses that really helped you? And what were some of the things that were a waste of money to you, if you have anything like that?
Let me start with the waste of money because that's going to be easier to explain. So, going back to knowing your limits, biggest waste of money for me was buying all the classes. And I say this because I fucking hate taking classes. And yet, there is something in me that says, I need another class. But do I even watch that class? No. And in the first year of photography, I bought over 100 classes. To date, I probably have over 500 classes logged. Now, two, or really number one, which is when you asked, what did I do differently in investing in myself? I enrolled in what's considered one of the most like prestigious life coaching programs out there, one of the gold standard programs. I get into it, and from like day one, I'm like, what is this? I went to a program that I would say 99% of the other graduates would say was amazing, but it was not amazing for me. It did not give me the skills that I needed, that I wanted to learn for coaching. So I come out of the program, and this is what starts causing that whole internal conflict. This is why I go to SEO, because I know I'm not a good coach of the type that I want to be. So, second time around is me coming back, me addressing, I have a specific learning style. Bigger investment I made for me was time. So I basically created my own program to teach
Mm,
myself what I needed to know for coaching.
yeah. This is an incredible point because some previous guests have mentioned this in relationship to investing in coaches and how they thought it was one of the worst investments they made, but also one of the best because they would go through some of them that they hadn't really thought about what they needed and what that person could give. And I think the point about courses and understanding how you learn is amazing and that you can learn through time. There's a big taboo on that, of course, but I think
Yeah.
that it's a really
But
good
okay,
point.
I have to ask you because that was such an interesting question. What do you think
Yeah.
was your biggest like wasted money?
So I'm a little bit different. I have found value in courses, but I've been really careful. I think in 10 years, I've done maybe 10. So it was really delaying and thinking about which ones are for me. And I've always been very self-taught learner person, like sit and just, the one who wanted to get the A's. So for me, it was natural to learn that way. And I know that about myself. But I invested in a coach who had a group program and it was $10,000 for it. It was a 6-month program. And that coach wasn't even leading it. She had hired other coaches to lead it. And she promised, of course, that your first month you make 10K, make your investment back once you launch. And I did everything. When I tell you I did everything they told me to do when they said to do it, perfectly done, all the approvals, go to launch in the way that they said. No one buys. Go to lunch again. No one buys. And at this point, it's not even just the 10K I invested in her, it's the Facebook ads, it's everything else, right? And so for me, that was the worst investment. Other people did well with her, but I think for me, it was just not a fit. The approach wasn't right. I didn't like the way of selling.
It's like I could feel my heart like cringing when you were talking about all this. And you're different too, right? Because you did everything they
Yeah.
told you to do.
And I think what it is, and this is kind of a question to ask you too as a final one, is I can look back and see the problem was she had success in coaching people who were promising weight loss specifically. Like that was the end goal. And people are willing to pay a lot of money for that if you can promise it in any other way. I did not want my promise to be weight loss. As you know, I'm very much about body image and going into fitness for strength. And I was trying to do a program that didn't focus on that. So she couldn't teach me how to create that program because she hadn't done it. And I think that was, looking back, the biggest problem. But it was a good signal to change. And that leads to the last question for you, which is what are you doing? You've already talked about what you're doing differently in how you approach clients. What are you doing differently in terms of messaging so you attract the right clients?
I think what I'm doing differently today is applying some of the same things that I naturally knew from SEO. So, what made my SEO content so popular was it was very simple and it was very specific, right? It was tangible. My problem with coaching before, like trying to put out marketing messaging for coaching, and I still see this with 99% of the coaches out there, is their content is too vague. So, just like you were just saying with yourself, you didn't want to promise weight loss. You didn't know how to position this other perspective for it. It's okay to take the stance you do, but you need to learn to communicate in a very tangible way so that people who see your content can immediately identify themselves as this is me. They need to see your post and raise their hand and be like, oh my God, that's me. So that's the major shift I made. Every time we make a shift, we, for some reason, almost like cut off pieces of ourselves from before. We think this is new. I don't know how to do this. And that's probably not true.
And you can kind of see that in the style that you write, in the content that you choose. This is also why you're doing so well on TikTok, from what I see as an outsider. It's geared up towards that kind of specific pain points. And it's an important message. Thank you for sharing it. Last question is, where can people connect with you? Where can they find you? I highly recommend that they do, because whether they need coaching or not, you're an amazing person to watch and how you
Oh,
have
thank you
developed your
so much.
business.
And same for you. Like you and I have been walking like these journeys sort of side by side. We've been going through changes and what we focus on and it's been lovely to watch you, especially with launching this new podcast. So I'm so honored to be on this one too. You can find me on my website, seattlelifecoach.org. You can also connect with me on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. Search for Jule Kim and you'll find me. I'm on all the places.